Well, hello FBC friends, and let's get started. This is our third week in Behind the Scenes, and we've been diving headfirst into our exclusive play, The Epic Events of Esther and the Empire. How do we feel about the title? Is it sticking in there? Alright, wonderful. I'm glad you like it. Now you see tensions between Mordecai and Haman. They're coming to a boiling point, and they're rising so very quickly, and today we are going to see what evil plot is being hatched against Mordecai, Esther, and the Jewish people living in Persia. Now, it's showtime. Let's get started with some singing and dancing.
I'm reading my B-I-B-L-E, and this is what it says to me. It tells me that I'm never ever alone. I'm learning how J-E-S-U-S came down to us and gave his best. Without a doubt the best friend you'll ever know. Our God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. Oh, oh. I'm reading my B-I-B-L-E, and this is what it says to me. It tells me that I'm never ever alone. I'm learning how J-E-S-U-S came down to us and gave his best. Without a doubt the best friend you'll ever know. Our God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. Oh, whoa. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. Oh,
you notice I threw a Christmas song in there? I cannot wait for the Christmas season. In fact, behind the camera on this side, there is a Christmas tree ready to go. Now, this story, part of our Esther story, because so much is happening and we're not even close to the finale yet. We're talking a lot about how we can have support from others and how we can be supportive to others. Now, who is your supporter? Has there been someone this year who has supported you big time? Like you tried something new and they just cheered you on the entire way, or you accomplished a difficult task and they were right there helping you along. Did they show up to a game or event for you? Did they cheer for you and encourage you? Did they call you or write you a letter or a note to just encourage you and make you feel a little bit better in a sad time? Did they help you out of a sticky situation? Did they teach you something new? Did they pray for you when you were sick or having a rough time? Did they give you something that you really needed? We have amazing supporters in our lives. Maybe they're our family, our friends, maybe just strangers in a grocery store. This is something my mom loves to do, but she loves to pray for people. When we were at the fair a couple weeks ago, I think she stopped and prayed for like 10 people while we were there. And you never know who God is going to send to you to help you and support you. So I want you to think. I'm going to actually put a little music on the video, maybe just something that's calm and smooth. And I want you to think for about 20 seconds about someone in your life in the last year who has just helped you and supported you. Now, with our show nearing its very end, I've put all of my actors on a rest for vocals right now, so nobody is allowed to talk and move. You see, it's very important that when the show opens, they're able to speak clearly enough that the audience can hear them. So right now, all they're doing is practicing where they need to stand and what they need to look like and what their faces need to do on stage. So this week, you're going to have me reading the story and some of our scriptures as we see what happens next in the epic events of Esther and the Empire. I just love all those E words. I got to get them all in there. So, welcome. And this week we are going to be reading the scriptures and the story about how Haman hatched an evil plan to destroy his arch nemesis, Mordecai, and all of his people. And now, without further ado, I present to you Esther chapter 3 and chapter 4. Now, Haman was this high-ranking official in the king's court. In fact, he was the second most powerful man in the kingdom, and we read a lot about him last week and what his plan was for Mordecai. Do you remember? So let's see what happens in that time and how Esther and Mordecai responded to Haman's plans. Whenever Haman entered a room, everyone would be bowing down around him, but we know Mordecai worshipped and loved only God, and he refused to bow down to Haman, which, every time it happened, made Haman get until one day he decided to get rid of Mordecai, and not just Mordecai, but all of Mordecai's people, which were called the Jews. They're the Jewish people, and they were in Persia at the time. So Haman, he kind of went to the king. He said, knock, 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 I got a question real quick. And we're going to open our Bibles and read what Haman said to the king. Ready? Chapter 3, verse 8 says, Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, There's this certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire who... they keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from our laws and our people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So, is it not in the king's interest that they be to let them live? And if it please the king, can you issue a decree that, they just be destroyed? And I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. Well, the king agreed, and he confirmed his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Haman didn't tell the truth when he told the king what his plan was, did he? You see, Haman went to the king, and the king listened, and he was, nodding and agreeing along, is what we think. But Haman made the Jewish people out to be this absolute menace to the kingdom. Like they were hurtful of other people and keeping separate because there was something wrong with them, which was not true at all. And Haman just hated one person, so he was going to punish everybody for it. But you see, the king agreed, and he gave off his ring, and he took off his ring, and he gave it to Haman, which meant that Haman could create and enforce any law that he wanted. And we've read a lot about this happening before in other stories, how these kings would make these laws, like Daniel in the lion's den, where the king decided anyone who didn't bow down and pray would be punished, and Daniel didn't do it. And he was thrown into a lion's den. The king's like, I can't change the law. We keep running into these kings that can't change the laws. Well, it's a problem. Haman took the ring, and with like a villainous smile, maybe an evil chuckle, he skipped off to set his plan into motion. And soon after that happened, he gathered together the royal scribes, and they wrote this order that Haman just made up, and all of these notices were delivered to the lands all throughout the provinces. And the order was this. He picked a day, so it was in less than 1 year. On this specific date that he picked, and I believe it was April. April, that was right. All of the Jewish people would be rounded up and destroyed. Men, women, children, maybe even their pets too. It doesn't say that in the Bible, but Haman was really evil. He might have gotten everything. And when Mordecai heard this, he kind of freaked out, because obviously these are his people. He was so anguished and upset and angry that he tore his clothes, and he dressed in sackcloth along with the rest of the city. Now you see, back in this time, when someone was grieving and in anguish and upset and angry, they wore special clothes so that everyone around them knew that they were just in such turmoil and upset. And when Mordecai's cousin Esther heard that Mordecai was out in the gate wearing these clothes, she sent a messenger to figure out what was going on. And the messenger ran from the palace to the gate where Mordecai was. And Mordecai told the messenger to tell Esther about what Haman had done, because she didn't know. And he gave the messenger a copy of the decree, of the rule that Haman had sent out, that was posted everywhere. And he told the messenger to tell Esther that she needed to go and talk to the king and ask him to cancel this order. So the messenger ran back from the gate, back into Esther. And when Esther heard Mordecai's message, Esther was so upset. Now you see, there were these rules that the queen just couldn't go talk to the king. You had to have an appointment. You had to schedule this out. And she could risk her life by doing this, just going to the king without doing it. If she just showed up unannounced, she could lose her life and be in huge trouble. So the messenger then took Esther's message and ran back to the gate to Mordecai. And this is what Mordecai said to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all of the Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from somewhere else. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. One of my favorite verses ever. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days and nights, and my maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. I love this part of the story because Esther started this part of the chapter going, I can't go see the king. I could lose my entire life. And Mordecai says, if you're not going to stand up for your people and what you believe in, what God is asking us to do, God could save us from somewhere else. But you were made queen out of all of these women that were brought into the palace. You were put in a place where you could speak to the king, where you were in his presence and in his palace. Perhaps God made you specifically for this exact moment. Perhaps you were created for such a time as this. I love it. Now, starting at that moment, Esther, Mordecai, and all of the Jewish people in the city of Susa began to pray. The end. It's not the end of the entire story, but it's the end of our video for today because I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger. You see, next week we're going to wrap up the end of the story. And we have this wonderful hope in our hearts that although this impending date of the end of the Jewish people in this area is coming close, Esther's got a little courage on her side this week, and Mordecai's out there praying and fasting with all of them, and they are not going to stop praying until we figure out what is going to happen. So, next week, tune in to figure out what happens to Esther and Mordecai and the Jewish people, and oh my goodness, Haman's still lurking around there too. I wonder what's going to happen to him. So you see, what's going on in our story is in the front of our play. But God is giving us support behind the scenes. So they are going to go immediately, stop what they're doing, they're going to fast and they're going to pray without ceasing for the strength and courage to stand up and do what is right. Perhaps Esther is in the exact moment that she needs to be to stand up for her people. And I love this part of the story. Now, I myself am a big fan of the theater. I love to go see shows. I just saw a show last night. It was amazing, and I've been singing and dancing all night since then. But we learned today that God gives us support behind the scenes. And behind what everyone sees of the world, God's right there encouraging us and being our supporter along the way. And we can do the exact same thing for other people. Remember at the beginning of the video, I asked you who your supporter has been in the last year? But I have a question. Have you ever heard of the expression, break a leg? Don't actually do it. But what do you think it means? It's kind of an odd way to say, but it comes from long, long ago when people would bang on their chairs when they liked a performance. Instead of like clapping or yelling out, they would just like bang their chair and be like, yeah, it was a wonderful show. And if they broke the leg of a chair, it meant that the actor on stage did such a wonderful job that they literally got applause and cheer that broke the leg of a chair. Isn't that so silly? So when we tell performers, break a leg, it's kind of like saying, good luck, I hope you do really, really super awesome well. It's a wonderful way of supporting fellow thespians, which is a fancy word for actors. But giving support is as easy as saying, break a leg. We can support others in many, 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 many different ways by saying kind words, giving them something that maybe they need to complete a task. Like, I was doing something the other day and I just needed some twine and I couldn't find it anywhere. It's like a scratchy rope kind of thing. And I was so close to finishing a project and I was like, man, I'm going to have to go all the way to the store. And I bumped into someone in the hallway and I was like, I got to go all the way to the store. And they're like, I have twine. And I said, yeah, but I need like the big stuff. And they're like, I have the big stuff. And I was like, you just saved my day. You made it feel so much better because I got support from someone. So maybe you could also like help someone out with a chore, or maybe an assignment if you're doing school, or just sitting next to someone and listening as they just tell you about either the good things or the bad things going on in their lives. Take a minute to think about how someone has supported you in the past. And if it made you feel really good, maybe that's a great way for you to support someone in the future. And don't forget, Miss Sunny has our memory verse from Philippians chapter 2, verse 13, which says, for it is God who works in you to will you and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. In fact, that reminds me a lot of what Esther is struggling with this week. She needed God to work through her, didn't she? She had a hard time thinking about doing it all by herself. But with the support of Mordecai behind the scenes and the support of God behind the scenes, we're going to see what Esther's going to do in a big, brave way next week. Will you join me in a word of prayer as we close? Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for the story this week that helps us to remember that perhaps, God, you have put us in the exact place like Esther to do something bold and brave and courageous, to stand up for what is good and right, that you are within us to fulfill good works and to help us to act in a way that can fulfill your good purpose. Heavenly Father, as the holiday season comes closer, I'm so very thankful for the support of those around me. And I ask that you help us to be supportive of those around all of us, in our families, in the grocery store, in places like the fair where we don't even know who we're coming across and how they might be just asking for the love of God to be shown to them. Help us to do our very best in loving others as you love us. In your holy and precious name I pray. Amen. I am on edge for the end of this story, so have a great week and come back next week to see how behind the scenes wraps up. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.